What is up, wrestling card fans? Welcome to the Huskerkavs Wrestling Card Podcast. My name's Mike. I'm from Mike's Retro Trading Cards, and I'm joined by Huskerkav himself. Anthony, how's it going today?
Good. Getting ready to leave for Kansas City in a couple hours for a big card show this weekend, so I'm anxious, but ready to go. A lot of work put into getting product ready, and we'll be headed down there here shortly after the podcast.
That's a lot of work. But of course, you're not the only person. We have a full house here with us tonight, right? We have Barry Koppal, we have David Peck, Joey Graben, and Rob England. And if I said anybody's name incorrectly, I apologize. I'm winging it here. But how you doing, gentlemen?
Good.
Are we ready to talk about some wrestling cards?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the topic for this episode is to grade or not to grade. I'm sure most of the people watching probably know, but these guys are OGs when it comes to grading and collecting graded wrestling cards. And they're going to share a little bit of their knowledge. We're going to give them some questions, get their opinions about some things. I have some fun ones here I want to get to. So let's get right into it. Anthony, you want to start it off with them?
Yeah, I want to start by having each one of you guys, because I respect you very much in our hobby, and I just want to say thank you for coming on our podcast. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just give us a brief overview of how you got started collecting and wrestling cards, and what moved you into grading from the very get-go. Go ahead, Barry.
Okay. You want me to start first?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. I've been collecting cards for probably 25 years. Probably about 5 years in, I realized that I was having you remember the books, the fat books that you buy, and then you get the sleeves and you put your cards in there. Then I was starting to realize, hey, these cards are starting to bend a little bit. There's a way to. I didn't like those the little shells that you used to screw down. That's what you used to do before.
Right.
So I didn't like those. Just I don't know. I couldn't really put my finger on why I didn't like them, but I just didn't like those. Then I just started to see cards pop up on eBay. So I was like, that's kind of good. Let me just buy a couple little cheap ones. I'm probably not going to like it, but I remember getting a Junkyard Dog 1985 Topps, one of those type cards. And I was like, this is actually kind of nice. It was like a PSA like 2 or something like that at the time. But it wasn't about that. It was more of just getting the experience of having the card in the case. And at first when I got it, I was like, well, it kind of ruins the card because you can't touch the card anymore. But then after a while I started thinking, well, why the fuck do you want to touch the card?
Right.
Exactly.
You're ruining the card by touching it.
Nothing good can happen.
Do I want sunlight touching the card, ruining it? If I drop a card, I used to collect action figures a ton. And, a lot of it's all about the condition of it. You could have a perfect action figure. You drop the case, you just ruin the whole value of everything.
Right.
Well, the nice thing about cards is once you get them graded, once they're in the case, hell, I could throw it across the room. Worst case is I just resubmit it to PSA and they can reslab it, for like $10-15. So you're kind of like have a little bit of protection there. And then that kind of tells you a little bit, difference on how nice of a card that you have, if you're concerned about that.
Cool. So you would say, Barry, out of the get-go, the thing that attracted you most to grading was the fact that card is pretty much preserved in its own case for the life of that card.
The preservation of the card was the most important thing to me.
Gotcha. Go ahead, David.
Hey, what's going on, guys? David Peck. Go by dpeck100 online. I started collecting baseball cards in 1985 and kind of stopped in my early 20s and then picked up again in the late 20s. And in 2008, I just got destroyed in the stock market trading options. And, so I got married at the end of 2008. And so between those two events, it really hit me financially pretty hard because I paid for my wedding. So in 2009, as my cash flow was coming in, I was like, gosh, I want to do something, but I'm tired of gambling my money away in options. And so when Brock Lesnar was in the UFC at UFC 100, I thought, something. Let me see if I remember Brock had tried out for football. Let me see if there's any football cards. I felt there was, and so I saw some football cards and I bought those. I bought his cheap wrestling cards. I remember paying $25 for a sweet spot upper deck Brock and thought, man, I'm going in kind of heavy here. And I said, you know what? Let me see if there's and I remember there was an 85 tops Hogan. And, we didn't, in 85, money was very tight. So baseball cards was everything. I think I bought maybe 3 or 4 packs at the Florida Mall of the WWF cards. And so all of a sudden, I found a listing that showed the 82 All Stars, and then the same seller had he had the A and B, and so he wanted $399 and $359, and I thought, I'm not sure if I want to get this aggressive yet, so I let them go, and they went a week, and they didn't sell. So the next week, final day, like the night before, it was $199, and the 82A had a PSA 9 Hogan and a PSA 9 Jerry Lawler. The 82B had a BGS 9.5 Iron Sheik, BGS 9 Slaughter, and Tito Santana, and that was $159. So I put in my bids, woke up the next day, I won the auctions. Maybe a week later, the guy had sent me all the cards, and I opened the box, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's an Andre the Giant card. There's a Ric Flair card. Then we get to 82B. I'm like, there's Kerry Von Erich. I'm like, this is crazy. And so I started heavily researching cards, and there's a 1959 Fleer Three Stooges set. And, that was really the only sort of non-sport set that had a lot of value. And I said, something, the way wrestling cards have a shot to go up is through grading. And it's the registry, and, these things have the right formula. So I started buying them, and the rest is history.
Cool. What about you, Joey?
Okay. So kind of like Dave, I started collecting in 85. I'm 46 years old. Okay. So started collecting like 85. First thing I ever bought was Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah, I remember those. Loved them. Loved them.
I actually remember buying 85 tops WWF cards off the rack or whatever. Kind of like Dave said, like once I got into high school, kind of gave it up, got into girls. Then I'm terrible with dates, honestly. I've been thinking about this, but I think it was right around 2011 when I kind of started really getting disposable income that I'm pretty sure like the first card I sought out was a Bruiser Brody card. I was just curious if he had any cards. And that's the first time I saw the Wrestling All-Stars cards. And from there, I bought my first Brody, which was like a single. It came, honest to God, don't remember what kind of shape it was in. Later on, I ended up giving it to a buddy. And I don't remember how, but at some point, I saw the article in, in the PSA magazine with Dave in it, okay? And at this point, okay, and the first time I've ever said this to anyone, but like I saw the article and I thought he seemed like an asshole. Okay. But at the time, that's how I felt. And I'm like, I'm gonna catch this guy. I'm gonna try to catch him in the registry. And I've been trying ever since.
Funny.
What year is it, Joey?
Yeah, exactly.
It's taking a little while.
So you didn't like that statement when I said that nobody would be able to recreate my set?
Exactly. And I'll tell you what I realized early on, right? What I realized early on, and I don't think anybody will ever catch him in 82A, like ever. I think that I started probably 2 years too late. and I just don't think the cards are out there to catch them. But in 82B and 83, we'll get there. We'll eventually.
Ooh.
Cool. So the gauntlet was dropped tonight. That the challenge is on. I love it. I love it. So Joey, do you think, looking back, doing the grading aspect of it, to you, was it more along the lines of a competition thing initially, and then you just kind of moved on to the grading being just part of your collecting?
Okay, so here's the thing. To guys of a certain age, because I can't speak for every generation, but I can speak for me and guys about my age. I want the best. I want the best. I want to be the best. That's what it's about. Grading, with grading, you can buy stuff on eBay or on any auction, and you know what you're getting. Okay,
gotcha.
That's kind of what it is for me and why I do it. Now, when I first heard of grading cards, I was so skeptical. Super skeptical. I'm like, okay, I'm going to send my raw cards into somebody else. They're probably going to snatch them and send me back some bullshit.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Right.
But as I started getting cards graded, it's a great process. It allows you to sell online, and it allows the buyers and sellers to have confidence in what they're buying and what you're selling. So
gotcha. What about you, Rob?
First off, I just want to say the guys that you have here tonight are amazing. And when you say OGs, these literally are OGs. I have so much respect for Barry. Of course, people know who David is because he's the promoter of wrestling cards for over a decade. And I have to say that Joey, to me, used to be like the boogeyman. And what I mean by that is if there was a card on eBay, you hoped that he wouldn't come out and snatch it in front of you, because if he came in, it's all over. And it was over for David. It was over for me. But I would say during a period of time, he disappeared at various times. And so we were bidding on cards and be like, whoa. And I just called him the Graben. So the Graben didn't come in. I got a pretty good deal. And so just to be able to interact with Joey here tonight, I think is awesome.
Okay, seriously,
He's
true
almost
story.
like a mythical creature out there.
True story.
He's the Grim Reaper.
He really is.
I've watched maybe 5 auctions in my whole life. Like I never watched the auctions in.
Wow.
I put in my bid.
But you know you're gonna win.
Yeah. I mean, I try to win, and if I don't, then I don't. But I'm not the guy who's there sniping at the end ever.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah, but I watch the ends just to see I just like to see the action. Even if I'm not bidding, I just want to kind of see where they end. So that's awesome that you're just like, okay, whatever.
Here's a question I want to field to you guys. We'll start with you, Barry. Go around again. What are the 3 most valued or prized cards that you have in your personal collection that you have graded? What are your top 3?
Well, when you asked that question ahead of time, I figured you just meant personal value, not necessarily monetarily.
Right.
Monetary value.
Whatever you feel is the highlight of your graded collection.
Can't show it that well because the camera and the reflection. This is Andre 1987.
That's his rookie card, you guys.
Yeah, according to Beckett, right.
This is the only one. This is a PSA 10. And as of right now, there have been 479, and this is number one of those.
Wow.
Beautiful.
And if you look at their whole registry, just the number of 10s in the whole entire set is only 72.
Oh
Wow.
And this is a 75 card set.
Yep.
That's 1987. So, another one probably isn't ever going to happen. So that one's probably my all-time favorite. This one is can't get that's probably the best
There you go.
show of it. That's a 2015 Topps Allen and Ginter Hulk Hogan autograph card. Originally in 2006. It's weird that this one just pops up and you can see it right away.
Yeah.
I think I saw Rob with this card. I mean, David with this card years and years and years ago. And it's like I just kind of fell in love with that card. But at the time, I didn't have the money to be able to get that card. And that card has just like gone up like kind of crazy in value. So like 10 years later in 2015, Topps did a reissue of it and made that. The thing about it is they made it a 1 of 10, but they made on the back of the card, it actually has the year. So it might be a 2006, a 2007, 2008, all the way through 15. So there's 10 years of them, and each one has a 1 of 10. So while somebody looks at this visually, you think it's 1 of 10, but the reality is there's actually 100 of these. And the difference is just basically the border right here and a year on the card somewhere in there. I can't see it with it facing. So it's basically 100 of these cards. And of the 100, only 2 of them are graded PSA 10. And this one is.
Wow.
That same year, Topps came out with Thunderlips. You remember the Rocky movie? I don't think anybody can't remember it. And they also did this card for Thunderlips, and this one is also at PSA 10. I collect the Rocky stuff just as much as I do. You know, I have a nice Rocky collection of just Hulk Hogan stuff, and this is another one of that. So I kind of consider those 3 just kind of one. And my third favorite, real simple, is Transcendent Collection. I have the entire set. Entire set is graded. This is Vince McMahon.
Excellent.
So I have a nice little set of his. So
McMahon family in general are huge sellers in our store, believe it or not.
Yeah.
What about you, David?
Well, one of the things I kind of wanted to add about graded cards is that what attracted to me early on was they sort of become like insert cards. So, there's so much made about limited print run cards in the hobby. And with grading, you sort of create limited print runs. So like Joey just bought the Ivan Putski, that's a Pop 3. And, anybody that's collected these cards for a long time knows that you can't just magically find those, and we're kind of at a point of where we're running thin on material to even have new ones, right? And so the beauty of graded cards is that you can have maybe something that's either common or not common, but all of a sudden, somebody has a 7, but you've got a 9 or you've got a 10, and it's a different animal. So I kind of sort of look at this as I've got a number of graded cards, and so it's very challenging to narrow it down to 3. I didn't pull them out because they generally don't show well on camera for me, and it's just sort of easier to talk about. I have 2, so they're the 1982 Wrestling All-Stars Ric Flair. The Pop Report shows 6, but there's only 5 because in 2010 the original one graded, a guy crossed it over to Beckett, and so it sort of died. But in April, or I guess it would have been more like May. Ric Flair was making his return to the ring, and he was going to wrestle Jay Lethal in TNA. And so the first PSA 10, after the cards started getting some traction, came available. And I got shilled. I was real active on the PSA message board. And, actually, let me take that back. It must have been more like July because I got on there in the first part of July. And so somebody on there decided that they were going to shill me. And it's kind of interesting because they got me for about $500. And so, I would have won for like 700 something, but they did a good guess because their max was 1200 and my max was 1250. But we went to the show, and I didn't have an iPhone yet. And so, we get back to the car, and I was like, oh my gosh, did I win? Did I win? And I won for, 1225. And that was the first wrestling card to ever sell for 4 figures. And what was nice in that auction is I won the Dusty Rhodes 10 for 122. I won a Jimmy Snuka for 39. I won the Superstar Graham for 117. And everybody thought I was nuts. And so I have 2 of the 5 Flairs, but I got to put that in the top because while I like Flair, I like Hogan. That is what triggered the obsession for wrestling cards to really get going. Like all of a sudden people were like, wait a second, this stuff is actually maybe worth something. Fast forward, I ended up I had a Hogan 9 and that I got with the original set, and I just felt like maybe there was better copies out there. It was graded a long time ago, and on top of that, I just wanted to sort of keep buying them. But I was in Miami. I took my wife to South Beach, and all of a sudden, I check eBay, and there it is. This beautiful Hogan was listed, and this is when people were now trying to get money for him. So it was listed at 19, like basically 2,000, and I knew the seller, and I messaged him. I said, listen, I got to have this. What's it going to take? And I paid 1,500 for that one. And, that's the Hogan that you see on their website. That's the Hogan that's been in the PSA magazine. And actually the cert right now is flagged because people made fakes of it. But I don't want to send it back to PSA. I talked to Jackie, and I just said, look, I don't want you guys touching the card. I'm not selling it. I also like the Providence, people, it's the one on their website, right?
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And then the third one, I mean, and Joey and I, in my opinion, are in a select category. A PSA 9 of the 82 Andre is, just a unbelievable card. Yeah, he's got his right there. What had happened is the one he has. So before Joey came in and basically became the axe of the market, where you had to really rumble. There was, Rob and I battled some. There was a few other people that battled, but I was bringing the heat, right? And so on this Andre that he has, that's the first PSA 9, and I lost the auction. I got sniped, and I just was like, I was distraught. And I remember going to the pool the next day and telling my neighbors, and they sort of were laughing at me like, oh, these are first world problems. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand. I said, you don't understand. Like, this is an incredible card, and like, you're not going to get many chances. So then what happened is this seller from California, Nate something, he put it up for like $4,200. And I was like, gosh, you can't get me for double. Well, then what happened is the second one hit, and thankfully the seller that I'd bought the Ric Flair and some of these other cards from contacted me, and it was somebody else's, but we worked a deal off eBay and secured that at a slightly lower price than it had sold for. And of course, Joey got his for less than I paid, so he's the one that really killed it. But the beauty. We talk a lot about the Prism. We talk a lot about this stuff. These are the type of cards that don't leave collections, right? So the Andres have popped 4, and you go find one,
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Right. Go ahead, Joey.
Okay. So what's the question? Favorite 3, right?
Yep. Your top 3 in your personal collection. We know one's the Andre, but you got to hold that up again for everyone to see.
The one's the Andre. Like Dave said, I guess this was the first one. I had no idea. Like when it comes to the history of these cards, Dave and Rob are the guys. Like they can remember what I paid for my cards more than I remember. I mean, seriously, like, okay, so the Andre.
Here, you want to hear something that's going to blow your mind, Joey? Do you know what I paid for my 3 Wrestling All-Star sets back in the day?
Tell me.
$5.98 for
Jeez.
all 3 sets from Renata Galasso. She ran a business out of New York City, and she is someone that we're trying to find because I want to bring her on a podcast and just talk about collecting. But anyhow, go ahead.
I've got I want to say 483 sealed sets that I still have sealed that I bought from WrestlePrints.com in probably 2011, 2012, something like that. See, second,
and I would say, to be honest with you, and Rob, you and David may be able to confirm this. I would say unopened sets are almost as rare as PSA 10 All-Stars, are they not anymore?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's 419 PSA 10s from all 3 sets. So yes.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, just the idea of being able to find the a complete set still in its original plastic when you bought it from the company, to me is almost as much of a treasure as the PSA 10s.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joey. Sorry.
My second one. See, oh my God. Okay.
Yep, Bruiser Brody.
Autograph. Bruiser
Oh
Brody.
yeah.
Like this right here was my Grail card. Like he's my absolute favorite. Love him more than anyone else. Always believed in him. And this autograph one that I have, okay, I've got one autograph one that I'm pretty sure came from Rob. This other autograph one, oh my God, I forget his name. Like the guy who it came from. He was the guy who was the first one that I knew that like tried to put together the set. Like I don't even remember. Let's see. And the third one, and I hate to go non-wrestling, but it's such an iconic
No,
card.
that's cool. Go ahead.
Boom.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Upper Deck, King Griffey Jr., PSA 10.
Nice.
I mean, it's
That,
like,
that was the baseball card that changed all baseball cards back in '89.
yeah. I mean, it really was. And that was like the peak of my collecting. So to be able to go in, like, and I forget what year I bought that, it doesn't matter. But like to be able to go back in and get like such an iconic card in perfect condition, you got to love it. You know, you truly have to love it.
Yep. So Rob, you're up next, and I'm really curious because through the years I've watched you grade some magnificent stuff. So I'm anxious to see what your top 3 from your personal collection are.
All right. So let's go ahead and start with Andre the Giant, 1973 annual. It's a PSA 10. So there's 4 in existence. Jeremy Padower has 1. So we know that he's not letting it go for anything cheap. And he's a great promoter of wrestling collectibles and figures. And another guy in Denver has the other one. I don't know where the 4th one is, but to have Andre's first appearance. And one of the things I really like about the 73s as well is, first, of course, I was dismissive of them just because they're paper. And I didn't necessarily believe that they were cards, but I actually, they have a bio on the back, which I think is really appealing. And I actually believe that once they're in a slab, you can't touch them. And that's a great thing for these things.
Right.
And so I think this is a real iconic card.
That was the card. I got one of those from you. I think I got it in like a PSA 8. And to be honest, I really didn't, I have a huge Andre collection. I didn't really like that card, but once I got it, it just grew on me. And I just love that card.
Yeah, I love it.
Because you bought it for $200 and it's like $2,500 or $3,000 now. That's why you like it.
Well, I would drop the money on it.
Yeah,
I would go on to add that whole set in general from that wrestling annual has some great wrestlers, great selection, and great photos. I think that whole set in general is just an amazing collection of wrestlers from the 73 annual. Go ahead, Rob.
And what I think is really great about that is you had the Parkhurst from 1954, 1955, but you really didn't have anything from 55 in essence until 73 for the most part.
Yeah.
And so I think it fills decades of wrestlers and provides something as far as wrestling memorabilia is, you know, and then there's of course some Japanese in the 70s, and then you get into the all-stars.
Yep.
And so that's one of my favorites. And another favorite, and I'm really happy that I was able to acquire this one, and it's really awesome just to see the run-up on this card. But this is the Hulk Hogan 82 All-Star autographed in a PSA 8.
Very nice.
This was featured in the PSA magazine. And what I really love about the Hulk Hogan card is, you know, we're post-pandemic. Prices are going down for a lot of these cards. Hulkster is going the other way. He's going up. And so just last week, you had a Hulk PSA 8 sell for over $11,000 on eBay. I believe the autograph adds a premium to that. And David and I were talking, and I believe that that's a $16,000 to $18,000 card at this point, and going upward in a down market.
Yep.
So how can you not love that?
Right.
Rob, let me chime in real quick. And the beauty of that card is the pop is a 3, but 2 of those were crossed over to BGS 9 signed copies. So there's only one PSA 9 signed Hogan and one PSA 8. So that is a beautiful thing.
You'd have to be pretty brave to crack out a PSA 8 Hogan and try to replicate that at this point for a 5-figure card, and hope that Hulk doesn't put his big old paws and put a wrinkle in that card and see 10 grand, just almost 10 grand disappear.
Evaporate.
So that's one of my favorites. And then what really got me into wrestling cards, of course, I was into card collecting way back in '83. I remember buying packs at my local grocery store. And but really what got me back into it is one of my good friends who has since passed. He bought me some amateur wrestling cards, like some game cards, and they're the 1995 Grapple.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really liked about amateur wrestling cards is that I would go to the World Championships, I'd go to the NCAAs, and to me, these guys were my heroes. So nice. I saw Kurt Angle win the world title in 1995 in Joey's backyard in Atlanta, Georgia.
Nice.
And got his autograph, and Dave Schultz and these amateur stars. And so I really just loved the appeal that, you know, I could go and see these guys in the concourse or autograph sessions and be just real up close and personal. And one of my favorites is Dan Gable. And so just about 20 years ago, I found out that in Italy that there was a Panini sticker for the 1972 Olympic Games. I had to have as many as I could. I was buying them all up, and I got one graded, and I got a PSA 9. It's a top 1. I ended up having some spares of this, and I've been somewhat of a not like a flipper in today's sense, but been able just to help bankroll my buying habit. And I put it up on eBay, and I had said that even Dan Gable doesn't have one of these. And his daughter actually reached out to me on eBay, and she goes, "You know what? You're right. My dad doesn't have one of these." And Dan's a big collector of his memorabilia. And I used to always get some autographs through Dan through the mail. And one time, I just love the guy. And I said, when I go to NCAAs, like, I'm going to give you like your rookie card so you can put it up in your basement and with all your gold medals and some of your trading cards. And so I was able to do that. And I just really collected amateur wrestling out of the love of it. But what's really cool now is I've seen a pickup in even amateur wrestling memorabilia. And I've had a guy offer me 5 figures for my Pop 1 Dan Gable, which
not for sale, baby.
Get rid of. Every card in my collection, this would be the last one standing.
Not for sale. Not for sale.
Not for sale.
All right. Well, you guys are all veteran graders, so you obviously all know why grading older cards makes sense. It's not manufactured scarcity. It's real. You know, there's only so many cards in great condition out there for the older stuff. But what I want your opinion of, and this is a two-part question, and I had to address it. What is your opinion on people that are grading the ultra modern stuff? And the sub question is, what are your thoughts on that gold rock prism and a PSA 10 selling for less money than a PSA 8 sold for in January? Go ahead, Barry. You can take it first.
Okay. I don't know about Joey, but I probably collect the most modern stuff out of everybody here, I would think.
I got a lot.
So, I mean, I have a good collection.
Cool.
Each rack there is 35 cards. So it's probably, I probably have like between 3,500, 4,000 cards.
I got all kinds of shit.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm addicted to getting it all graded. I love getting stuff graded, but as soon as I get it graded back and I get a 9, it's trash to me.
Yeah. For real.
It is with newer stuff.
So the new kick that I'm on is just getting it graded, authenticated, just get it authenticated basically. Where they'll just authenticate the card and the auto with no grade. That's what I like. I don't really care for the grade. I don't need the grade. The Vince McMahon doesn't have a grade. If this had a 9 on it, this just doesn't. This hurts the card if I have a 9 on it. 10 is kind of what you obviously want, but especially when you have these 1-of-1 cards. You got a 1-of-1. I got a Kane 1-of-1 Transcendent card, which sounds great. It graded a 5. Now you just ruined a 1-of-1 card that just is trash. So, you know, I don't like having grades on modern cards. When I go on eBay, if it's not a PSA 10, I'm probably not going to buy it unless it's like super, super cheap. If I put in an order at PSA, if the 9s, unless they're like a 1-of-5 or less, that's the only time that I keep them. So,
okay, David, I'm interested.
Well, hold on. Let's hear Barry's thoughts on the
rock card.
The rock card.
Why is the card that valuable?
Exactly.
Am I missing something on it? Of the cards, it's like this card wouldn't make my top 200.
Yeah.
If I'm missing something, please let me know. It just doesn't seem they're just fake manufacturing cards, kind of like the way Leaf is. Oh, it's 1-of-1, it's 1-of-3, it's 1-of-5, it's 1-of-7. Yeah, but once you add up all those, you made 1,000 of them. So of course everything's going to sound like it's unique. And then, okay, you didn't just do that for Rock, you did that for Stone Cold, you did that for every freaking superstar. So now all these limited editions, well, it's not really limited editions when you have 1,000 of them for The Rock, 1,000 of them for Stone Cold, 1,000 for Vince, Shane McMahon, every superstar. It's like, okay, it's not really, it's limited on how many you can think of that you want to create that sound like they're limited. It's exactly. It's like the Kia car limited edition, you know.
Yeah.
A fucking Kia. And getting it graded isn't going to fucking help it. It's still a stupid Kia.
God, I love Barry even more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a fucking Kia. All right, David.
Well, I got to tell you, I've done a number of podcasts, but man, we're at the top for this one, Barry. Man, I like you.
Hey, David, I aim to please when it comes to our podcast. So if you if you like these, just keep watching them, because Mike and I, we have a lot of good ideas and we're just bringing more and more stuff. But go ahead.
Well, this is quite entertaining. So, no, listen, I totally understand grading the modern. I mean, like Joey, for example, has been buying some really cool shit, and I get it, and I got no problem with it. I mean, what's interesting, what Barry was touching on, is some people are 10 or bust, right? If you look at some of the best 1982 Wrestling All Stars and B and 83. There was a guy named Dom Koski that was building some really spectacular sets, and he was a 10 or bust kind of guy. And so he quit getting grades on them and just went for authentic. And, people who bought some Dom Koski material have bought some really nice cards because maybe they were a 7, maybe they were an 8, maybe they were a 9, but he's 10 or bust. So I get the grading of modern. I think that one of the things Barry touched on earlier is the protection element. I have had cards fall to the ground and, you're panicked internally, but then you look at it and you just look at every single angle and you're like, you know what? It's not damaged. So I think there's that element. I do think that, unfortunately, with so much production, that you kind of need a 10 on a lot of cards.
Yeah.
And, that's, if you look at like sort of the modern I collect, so to speak, is say 2002 WWE Royal Rumble. All of a sudden there's a ton of 9s, right? I mean, it just because nobody was submitting them. The 10s are hard, but there's a lot of 9s. And so, the prices have collapsed and, it's understandable. There's a lot of new supply. In terms of the Rock, I guess I'm sort of the poster child for taking heat of
No. What are you talking about?
of going against the grain on the Prism. And
I hate you.
the only reason I did that was this. So let's just take the Rock 1 to 10, okay? And they were trumpeting it as a $50,000-$60,000 card. You need $600,000 of new money to come into the hobby to sustain that price, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, because think about this: is if I have something that's worth $50,000-$60,000, I can sell it and get the money, or I can hold it. Well, if you have 10 of those, you need every single person to hold the line, or else the price is going to go down. This is just basic economics. It's not tough. And so what's happened, the problem with that stuff is that as soon as a new card enters the market, there's a seller. So let's talk about, so Joey just bought the Ivan Putski, right? There's 3 people that have them. Me, Ray from Hawaii, which is Hysteric Garage on the registry, and Joey, right? I got mine in 2010. Joey's getting his 13 years later. He's been collecting this stuff for 12 years and has never had an opportunity to buy one. Well, when you have all of a sudden a Rock that's pulled on Whatnot and the guy paid $300, he does, he wants $33,000 for it. He wants $20,000 for it. But if it sells for $10,800, he's still killing it. Mm. Now, the challenge, and I try to not be too negative. I think the next one that pops up, the card's probably cut in half again. And I really believe that. I mean, I don't think that you can have another one of those in a PSA 10 enter the market anytime soon and not destroy the price. The Rock 1 of 1, the black, anybody that's questioned the sale is called a hater and so forth. Mm-hmm. It still shows not paid for on PWC's website. And one of the things they champion themselves on is that they show when something's paid for, like that's part of price discovery, and it still shows not paid for. So, and then you saw, they were close to potentially bankruptcy is what it sounded like for loans and so on. So I don't know if it's been paid for or not, but I can tell you this right now. If you paid $126,000 for that and a gold just sold for 10.8 and a 10, I would be feeling pretty uncomfortable. I've never been good at predicting prices. I will always say that so many times. Dave, what's this worth? What do you think this auction is going to go for? The answer almost every time is I have no clue. And so at the end of the day, when you see a card sell privately for 33,000 and publicly for 10,800, it's not going back up. I mean, it's like in the stock market, it's a falling knife. So I would be very uncomfortable if I own that card price wise. But you know something, a lot of us. Let me just take the other side of that. You know, when Hogan had the sex tape, people piled on me on the PSA message board because they knew I had a bunch of Hogans. The Hogan card dropped, the 82 All-Star dropped 50% overnight. Okay. So cards are inherently volatile. So, you know, could theoretically 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that card regain steam? Yes. But in the near term, it's toast.
Okay, Joey.
Yeah. Okay. What was the question again? Can you just
Your thoughts on grading modern cards and your thoughts on the rock sale.
Okay. So first of all, I was just sitting here thinking about how much money I've spent, okay, since probably let's say 2019, okay? And I would, goddamn, if it's not like close to $100,000, it's got to be close to that, okay? Like, because I spent so much money in 2020, like just grading cards, okay? And grading a lot of modern. And at that point, if I'm not mistaken, it was around $50 a card, okay? I graded a lot of them, a lot of the first Prism WWE cards at $50 a card, and have lost like a lot of money on that. Okay, way it goes. I mean, honest to God, if you don't get a 10, get a 10 on the Prism cards, I mean, what is it? You know, but as I've said recently, there was a time when if I didn't get a 10 on a Wrestling All Stars card, it was garbage as well. Okay. I mean, for the longest time, for a lot of the cards, a PSA 9 on the Wrestling All Stars, I was like, and I was disappointed. Okay. Way it goes. Okay. As far as the rock sale, all right. First of all, what you really have to ask, okay, is do you trust PWCC? Okay. No. I don't either. Okay. And I'm the guy, let me tell you something. I'm an auction guy. I like winning auctions. I mean, shit, sometimes I like winning auctions more than I even care about the cards. Okay. That's the reality. But like the PWCC, when eBay's kicking you off for shilling,
yeah,
I'm never going to go back. I've sold cards through PWCC. I've bought 1 million cards through PWCC. I will never do business with them again. Okay. So do I believe the price of the 1-of-1 Prism Rock? No, I don't. It's stupid. Come on. The one that sold this week through Golden is way more accurate. Now, I was bidding on that one, but to me personally, it was not worth any more than $8,000. That's the value that I put on it. Now, obviously, somebody else thought it was worth more, and that's cool, you know. Right. But again, you know, they made another 1-of-1 this year. They're going to probably make another 1-of-1 next year, okay, or whenever the license is up. You know, my point is like, you know, do I think that just because it's a Panini 1-of-1 that it's worth $100,000 or whatever? No, not for me. Maybe it's for the Gilmans or the whatever, but it's not for me.
Well, when you have 10,000 collectors and they're all looking for a 1-of-1, eventually one of them will want it, and the price will be right, and they'll have the money. So,
yeah,
maybe so, bro. Maybe so. Like,
it ain't for me all the time. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's you know, what gets me is, you know, you've got the same card that's a base card, and then it's got a black border, so it's worth 120 whatever. 120. Come on, man.
The funny thing is sometimes when they do the funny color card doesn't look as nice as the base.
I totally
agree. The base card is more attractive.
Okay, first of all, I collect all sports. Okay, like I really do. Like I collect all sports. Okay, and in every other sport, the Panini Silver Prism is huge. But in wrestling, the Silver Prism has been basically worthless, basically.
Garbage.
Yeah, garbage.
Yeah.
And like in so many other sports, the silver prism is huge. I love the silver prisms. I think the silver prisms look great, but
Disco.
the market does not reflect that in wrestling. So
All right, Rob.
So one of the things that I've learned as far as when it comes to grading wrestling cards is I just withhold judgment. And I say that just because in 2007, I decided I'm going to start grading wrestling cards, and people thought I was a fool, making fun of me. I posted some of my pop results on the PSA message board. No one would respond to me. Eventually, David came along, and he started talking about him. He took all the abuse, and I just kind of watched and supported him from the sidelines. So one of the things I've just learned is to each their own. If someone wants to do it, more power to them. And I think we're kind of different because we've all been collecting wrestling cards for a long time, and we're in the graded game as well. And so if people want to do it, they can do it. But I will say, as far as, for modern cards, it is PSA 10 or bust. They come out of the pack fairly nice. And people are the all or nothing type collectors. I will say, though, as far as, this Prism, one of one rock, and when I think of my own collecting history and starting in 1983 as a young kid and buying cards, and I had the best cards in my elementary school. It was pretty much well known. I had them all. And so what had happened, though, was in the early 90s is when you started getting more cards, some inserts, and it became overwhelming to me that I couldn't have them all. And so that actually made me retreat and not collect them just because of what was out there with the inserts. And to me, it's still the same today as far as I don't need to chase that manufactured scarcity. I might be collecting 2022 Prism in 2042. I'm always a couple decades behind. I remember there was a time when even 85 tops, I was like, these things are so common. Like, why would I want to buy those?
Yeah.
I'll collect this other stuff that's more interesting. But now I kind of respect 85 tops, and shoot, I got into 1998. So I'm just way behind the times. And one of the things, though, I would say about the rock sale is that I'm always skeptical of any one-time sale. And
absolutely.
If I pull a 101 out of a box, it wouldn't take much for me to come up with a plan with a friend or an alternate ID and try to make people believe something is worth more than what it is. So if I pulled out one of one rock black, maybe I could convince David to bid on it. Run it up.
Whoa. Time out.
We haven't done this, all right? We won't do it. But I'm just saying,
be the guy that pays way too
hard
much
to do. You could run it up, the sale falls through,
Yeah.
and I can go, oh, fell through. I'll just take $100,000 for that card.
There you go.
Give you the discount.
You get the discount.
Rob, you're talking in theoretical terms.
Totally theoretical. Absolutely. Although that happens all the time.
No, it happens all the time. And it's a point well taken, because the reality of it is in PWCC, one of my favorite cards, and I'm not going to disclose which one it is, but the seller won it several times. And then then he actually cracked it out, and it finally graded a 10, and then sold it to me for a lot more. But it ran, back in the day, PWCC, I hate to call it a dumping ground, but it was basically where all the top dealers would go so they could bid on their own cards. And they would have what they, so I took a lot of heat for saying that snipe bidding was ineffective. And the reason I believe that is the snipe shill, because basically what they would do is, let's say a card is $2,000, just for argument's sake. They put in the snipe at the last second for $1,950. And if it goes for $18.50, they either pay the fees or they just don't pay, and then it relists, right? And so the notion that somehow when you do a snipe at the end, you're going to save all this money. I mean, to me, it's comical because once again, I mean, there's all these shenanigans that get played, and PWCC was the the prime spot for that.
Yeah, they have a
Okay,
very
so here's
checkered history.
So here's an easy question for you guys. You'll be able to answer this with one answer really quick. Everyone's talked about PSA as pretty much the standard. As graders, if you're not using PSA, what other company would you use? What's your choice, Barry?
I've used several other companies. I've used GMA. There's a couple other new companies out there, but Beckett is the only other company really to use.
What
I
about
have
you, David?
an autograph in there that I like. I just don't want to crack it open.
Gotcha.
But I'm trying to get rid of every BGS card, put it that way.
Gotcha. What about you, David?
Macho Man is the exception because, it's Macho Man.
Basically, once again, I took heat for years telling people PSA was the only way to go, because one of the things people got to understand is PSA was so smart in building brand. And when I first started grading cards in 2010, I looked around and I basically saw that vintage baseball, for example, and yes, in pre-war, SGC is very competitive, but every high-priced card was in PSA. And I was like, let me get this straight. Why would I try to reinvent the wheel? If wrestling cards have any chance of succeeding, just go with the industry leader. And so obviously that was PSA. I would actually put SGC as my number 2. Their grades in recent years, I think, are a little lackluster. But if you find older SGC, just for example, Wrestling All Stars, I bought and thankfully Graben bowed out. He bid on this card, and it was cheap. It was a SGC 9 Junkyard Dog, and I won it for $56, and cracked it out and sent it in raw, and it crossed to a 9. So but I will say this: in recent years, I don't think SGC, as their volumes have picked up, is very good. To me, Beckett, there's some great Beckett cards from the early 2000s, but as they lost market share, their standards got worse. What is that you're showing, Joey?
That's
Beckett grade.
Ric Flair 9.5.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean that may be a beauty. The challenge is that you just don't. It's card by card. So I have had so you take that. Just let's, because I don't want to put down any grading company really. In the last year, I bought a BGS 9.5 Bobby Duncan, and I studied that thing like crazy. And I said, something, and it was Ray. Hysteric Garage, who had the only PSA 10, and he listed it, and I ended up winning the card and cracked it out, and it got a 10. So there's great cards in SGC, there's great cards in BGS. I just kind of basically go by, you got to look at the card, and so even in PSA, I mean, listen, there's some disasters in some PSA holders, right? Recently there was a Crusher SGC 9 that I outed on Twitter. I mean, that card's like a 6. So, I would just say, just make sure you look at the card if you're interested in, because there's a lot of people that just buy the slab, and I get that too. Yeah. But if not, look at the card.
What about you, Joey?
Okay, what's the question again?
Everyone recognizes PSA as the grading standard of the hobby. If you weren't using PSA, what's the next company that you would utilize?
So for me personally, I mean, like, honest to God, probably BGS.
Okay.
That's the one that I like mostly buy. SGC too. I mean, but I'm terrible at crossing over cards. Okay. So I mean, honestly, like, I mostly buy PSA if I can, help it.
Gotcha.
If something comes up in BGS or SGC, I'll buy them. They're always cheaper. I have tried to cross over some SGC, and it's hit or miss. You know what I'm saying? Like, either they will cross it over same grade, or it's lesser than, which is what you don't want. I mean, honestly, to me, PSA's king. So you got to roll with that. So
what say you, Rob?
Card saver.
Ultra
Need
Pro.
my money.
Gotcha.
Ultra Pro.
So you won't use. So in other words, you won't use anything else besides PSA.
Not really. I have done SGC in the past for cards that PSA are unwilling to grade. So for some old vintage exhibits, which I don't think PSA is ever going to come around to grading those. And so then I went with SGC with those. But in general, a lot of times I've just held on to them, and PSA has opened up their minds to some cards that maybe at one point that they didn't grade and decide to, and then I'll submit them at that time.
I do think PSA has a lot more they could grade in terms of wrestling cards. Like when you look at what, like, they grade pretty much anything out of sports, but it seems like wrestling, like the independent cards and stuff too.
Yeah,
I saw Matt Turner the other day said that they're about ready to grade the Limitless cards, which is cool. But like you would think they have to get into grading that a little more, right? Like the independent cards are getting so popular. I mean, CSG is grading pretty much any of them, I guess, for people right now. So PSA really needs to jump into that market soon, don't you think?
Joey?
Hey, yeah. I mean, seriously, like, okay, so with the Limitless Wrestling, okay.
Did you have a hand in that, by the way, Joey? And if you did, please tell us how that worked out.
Okay, so just like first of all, so I wish, I 100% wish that I was Rob, let me tell you something about the Wrestling Card King, okay? Or whatever, the Wrestling Card King.
You're good.
What you can, Rob, you can appreciate and thank him for all the stuff that PSA grades, okay? And Dave, okay? Dave is the guy. Dave is the leader. All I did, man, I tweeted Nat Turner, man. I tweeted Nat Turner and I said, hey, the people have spoken. And that's all I did, man. I'm probably the laziest collector. Spending money's easy. Spending money is easy. Like doing the groundwork that both of these guys have done, and I don't know about Barry, but both of these guys have done like the groundwork. All right. Me, guys, I didn't do any groundwork. All I did was like get lucky and tweet. However, I do have a 2018 MJF Limitless that currently is at PSA. So we'll see how it grades in in a month and a half or so.
Well, let me chime in on this because one of the things that's cool about Twitter is now you have access to people, right? And so Nat Turner, who runs PSA, is on Twitter. And, I really one of the beautiful things about the last year is when I'm not going to even name names because I'm not putting anybody over, but when Joey posted the MJF that he paid $3,000 for, okay,
and is that the one that's being graded right now?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh
Okay,
yeah.
okay, go ahead.
But
Six
well,
Six.
but well, so what? There's only what 20 copies.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
bro, I'm okay with that. I knew what it was when I paid that for it.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. There's 20 to choose from. Like, would a Babe Ruth, and I'm not saying MJF's Babe Ruth, but I'm just saying, like, if you think about scarcity, if there's only 20, grade becomes a lot less important on a base card, right? Like, I mean, you get into these brand new, like a one of one and stuff, it can hurt it. But nevertheless, the beauty of social media is he tweets Nat Turner and he sees it, right? And they go back to the company and basically work on stuff. I mean, listen, PSA is a for-profit company. So
Right.
did you send that in, Joey, as Super Express or something?
I sent that one in as regular, okay? Because again, I thought it would grade a PSA 6 at best. Honestly, probably maybe a 5. So we'll see. I sent it as regular.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. That's money. And they're not, they see obviously that their competition's starting to grade this stuff. And I think the real issue is, so like there's a guy named Caleb that pointed out today that, there's a little bit of concern that maybe some of these GCW sets have been reprinted. I know nothing about it. I don't want to get into that. But the reality of it is that's why PSA is careful on grading stuff. But I think it's huge. I can't wait to see Joey get it in hand and slap that bitch on Twitter. It's
Okay,
just
so let me ask you guys this quick question, because we're going to piggyback to that. Let's just imagine, Joey, that card comes back at PSA 10 MJF.
it's not going to. He knows that.
He knows
Okay.
grading.
But I'm just saying, if it did, if a PSA 10 MJF shows up, what's that thing selling for? Any guesses?
First of all, if it's a 10, honest to God, I think it's a $20,000 card.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a PSA 10. I think again, I said it before, it's a PSA 6 at best. And because it's in my collection, it ain't for sale. And like Dave said, and there's only about 20, 25 copies. It ain't for sale. So go try to buy one. You can't buy one. And if you can't buy one, and if there's a PSA 6, okay, all of a sudden, again, that's a nice card.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Grading indie cards, man. Grading indie cards is that's the next level, man.
I know it is. I can tell you guys, a lot of people don't realize it, but the bulk of my sales over the past 8 months has been nothing but indie cards or vintage. Modern stuff, not at all. A lot of Fleer products, but people are getting cards get autographed. But the bulk of my sales in the last 6 to 8 months has been nothing but solid indie cards.
Hey, let me say this right here. Okay, so what's so interesting, because I think Dave said something about Caleb or whatever, right?
Yep.
About the TNT set. Okay, so I'll say this right here. Yesterday, or maybe it was today's Friday, maybe it was Wednesday, I got a DM from the TNT company or whatever about they found some more of those sets. Okay. I bought 2 of those sets Wednesday. Okay. And there's, exactly those sets. And there's been controversy today that they're reprinting them. I don't know if they have or not. I know this right here. I know that I paid $200. I know I paid $100 a set. Let's see, 2 days ago, for those cards, okay, that they said they found or whatever. Now, as far as grading goes with those cards, that's interesting, because who knows what happens with that. I don't know if they're reprinted or whatever, but we'll see.
Yep.
Okay. I have a question here for all of you. You know that the Rock card, Rock Prism 1-of-1, supposedly sold for what it sold for. I'm not here saying it did or didn't, but we know what the sale was. If there was an 82 All-Stars PSA 10 of Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, do you think it eclipses that number?
Come on, bro. Yes. Hold on.
Hey, no, come on, bros. I'm just throwing this out here. It's a fun question.
First of all, let's be real, okay? A 1982 wrestling card of Andre the Giant. It's a PSA. First of all, I'll say this right here. Like, do I think I'll think this right here. This is the best wrestling card that exists. You will not get better than this. This right here beat a PSA 10 whatever Prism. Oh yeah. Every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
Barry, give us your opinion. You haven't gotten to talk much lately.
Barry.
He'll chime in.
It depends. I think the only people that's kind of rough, because how many people really collect the All-Stars? Everybody wants to collect the All-Stars. Does everybody collect them? Because now that's a certain buy-in price. So it's not like you're looking at a $10,000 card. How many people have the bank to be able to spend more than $50,000 on a card?
Good point.
So now you're down to 10 people probably, hopefully. I wouldn't be able to bid. I wouldn't bid in even if I had 50 grand. I would put it on something else, because now that's money that you could have invested in something else. And don't get me wrong, I love the card. I'm the number 2 Andre collector last time I checked, even though I've removed myself. I couldn't spend that much money on it, just knowing that you have that money tied up all in one card that could be that volatile on it. So I believe it could be, if The Rock really sold for that much, it would be at least that valuable. It is more than a $50,000 card. How much is it? It's really just down to 10 people and how bad they want it. I know 2 of the people are here and would probably bid everything they had on it. I'm not sure about Rob. Yeah, but
show me the money.
That might get you one. That'll get you one chip of the card, though.
So
that'll get you the dust on the card, Joey.
Go ahead, David.
Hey.
Well,
it's a lot different when you had to come up with the 50, 100 grand for a card. That's a lot of money.
The problem with those 2 cards is it's not going to be wrestling card collectors that are in the mix. I mean, some of us will be, but no, those are crossover cards, right? Like, so what you found,
it's like
and I've always said there's guys like Joey and I that like Dick Murdoch, okay, and okay, but a non-wrestling card collector doesn't care about Dick Murdoch. It doesn't matter if it's an 8 or a 9; they're not bidding. An 82, a PSA 10 of Hogan or Andre is going to attract interest from so many different levels. I mean, it could be the only wrestling card they ever even try to bid on. So I would say I think an 82A Hogan is a $250,000 card. That may be low. I don't think it is. I've always, and this is going to sound selfish, I've always hoped that one would not hit, because I didn't want to have the second best grade of that card. An Andre PSA 10, just forget about it. That's never going to happen. That's just, there's just no way. The Hogan, there's a more of a likelihood theoretically. But listen, I mean, I would, if tomorrow somebody hit a Hogan 10 and said, Dave, give me 100 grand, I would do it in 2 seconds. I wouldn't even think twice. So, and now the nice thing is I've got a lot of other cards that I could sort of parlay into that. But the reality of it is I would take the money out of my brokerage account and I would send you 100 grand in 2 seconds. So I think I think 100's cheap. I feel like I was actually stealing the card. So the thing about the Hogan is, so a lot of people don't understand. I mean, this thing has been sought after for almost 14 years. Okay. And so in 2013, when when PSA awarded my set, an award, Michelle and I went out to Chicago, and I was so excited. I wanted to get that award in person. We went to the National just to get to the award, right? And when we're going back on the bus to the hotel, guy was like, "What are you guys up to?" Blah blah blah. And I said, "Yeah, I collect the wrestling cards." Oh wow. He goes, "Yeah, that it sounds like that Hogan is really tough in a 10. Like I'd be kind of looking for one of those." So the number of dealers that have been trying to cash in on that card is off the charts. I mean, it's not a secret. Like if you're a seasoned card dealer, you are doing everything in your power to land that card because it's instant money. And so anyway, those cards would demolish the Rock sale. I mean, honestly, an Andre 10, so there's a DJ, Steve Aoki, and Steve Aoki, good or bad, loves Andre, right? So you would find people like that have, listen, I mean, I do okay in life, right? If I'm bidding against Steve Aoki, I'm toast. So, okay.
Or if you get Logan Paul into that game.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just the challenge is
that's what you need. That's what you need to get it going.
But if you bring in guys like that, it
also promotes the card just by knowing that they're bidding on it. That's going to make it go crazy.
Correct. So,
yeah.
Anything you want to throw in there, Rob?
Rob, what about me? Hold on.
Joey's got
Joey here.
Okay. Saturday, July 14th, 1984. Absolutely 100%, probably the worst day of my life. Does anybody know what that day was? July 14th, 1984. No? That was Black Saturday.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'm the guy who remembers that shit. Okay, 100% remembers what that was like. Okay, so to me, I don't give two shits about what the Hulk Hogan PSA 9. Now I can live with the Andre. I can 100% live with the Andre, right? But a PSA 10 Hogan? Nah. Okay, but however, would the PSA 10 Hogan or the PSA 10 Andre sell for more than the current top price of any wrestling card? Oh, come on now. 100% absolutely, okay? Yeah. What's interesting here, however, is I'm going to tell you something. Dude, I never specifically bought I never bought a PSA 9 Hogan specifically because, man, I hated Hogan, man. Like, I hated Hogan. It was hard for me to buy that. It was hard for me to buy that. And you talk about grading? Oh, come on now. Like, I mean, honestly, any of the Hogan stuff is hard for me. It's hard for me because I was a Georgia Championship Wrestling guy, okay? Mm-hmm. So on that day, when I saw Vince McMahon coming out trying to tell me what wrestling is, man, come on, man. Come on.
Rob?
Yeah, Rob.
Well, I think Hulk Hogan is extremely undervalued if Daddy Fat Stacks is not bidding on them. I'm even more inclined to buy these things now. But in reality, I'm with Dave as far as the Andre 10 is never going to happen.
Yeah.
The best chance would be as if it happened as far as,
that's
after the manufacturer, they cut it there. It never got into a pack.
Never got in the pack. Yeah.
So that's just not going to happen. Yeah. Let's cut up that uncut sheet. Let's see what we could do.
Where's it at?
But the Hogan, I think that's such an iconic card, and I think there's no doubt that it would bring in non-wrestling collectors
somewhere
And with proper promotion of that item, you could get a Steve Aoki, a Logan Paul, those kind of characters in on that auction. A pop one, you get ego involved where money's not an issue. And
hey, hold on. I don't mean to interrupt you, but like, I want to cement something. The boogeyman. Fear me?
He is.
Do not fear me.
In the night.
I'm going to run you up. I'm going to make you pay more.
I need to make a wrestling all-star for him, Dave, with that his name, the Boogeyman, in there.
Bro,
Fear me.
Barry, please do it.
I'll buy
Hey,
that.
Here's a question I wanted to ask you
He already
guys.
has a trading card.
In your experience, is there a current or modern or attitude era card that a young collector could get right now and get graded that he could see some increase over the next 5 to 10 years? Not Wrestling All-Stars or not any of this really collectible stuff, but I'm talking something more readily found. Is there something that you would recommend? What do you think, Barry?
There's a lot of old Fleer stuff that's like really nice, where you get a lot of on card autos. What was it? The Raw is what is that? The Undertaker booty card. I forget what you call it.
Raw booty.
That was from that was
just
All
a weird
Access.
name for
All
a
Access.
card,
They had All Access. They had one. I think it was Raw Booty insert set with that.
The WCW NWO authentic signatures. That was always a huge popular set for me. I've been collecting that set for 15 years, and I'm still only 75% done. And I'm probably not going to finish the set the way the prices are now. So, and then you got some good comic images like the Rock one. If you were to buy one of those for, you could probably buy a Rock one for probably $1,000 in hope for a good grade or get lucky with it. That would definitely increase the value. The Divas Championship collection, I think there were like 9 cards in that set. I think those would increase in value too, because that has the Stephanie McMahon, has Alita, and has Trish Stratus on it. And they're just beautiful on-card autos, and the artwork was on it, and they're just very, very, very nice display pieces. So,
David.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to add to this. I mean, I think what Barry said, like, for example, like that Stephanie McMahon auto, that's a really nice one. She's got a nice signature. Probably my, a major regret is I was the underbidder on the Rock 98 signed PSA 10, and I think the card's trimmed. And so I basically bowed out because I was like, I think that card's trimmed. And, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it looked trimmed. So that said, talking about future values is a really complicated topic because there's a lot of cards that I never saw doing what they would do. And there's other cards you think that maybe they'd go up and they haven't, and so I would just say that if you're buying cards only for them to go up, that's a tough call.
What about you, Joey?
Okay, first of all, let me say this right here. Okay, so if you are looking at who are the top wrestling card collectors, okay, and you're thinking, can I catch that guy? Okay, David, I'm going to catch him. I ain't bullshitting. Dead serious. He can sit there and act like he knows I'm not. There's zero doubt I'm going to catch him. And what he really needs to be thinking about, he needs to be thinking about what it's going to be like for him when I catch him. I mean, dead serious.
Well, I'll put it this way: when that day happens.
No, hold on. Right now, you're number one. But you're going to be number 2. That's the reality. That's real. right now you're number 1, and you're going to be number 2. So deal with
You want
that.
to take off your shirt and kind of flex a little?
Well, I tell you,
Encourage him.
Bro,
I would just, hey, listen, you know what? If somehow I'm number 2, I'm number 2. But I've been number 1 for 14, almost 14 years.
hold on. 2015?
What do you mean? 2015. I've been number 1 since
Hold on.
2009 when I started. So what are you talking about?
Wait, what
So
about?
I just want you two guys to just say live on the air with me and Mike that if that day comes, you're going to come on a podcast live with both me and Mike, correct?
Sure. But you know, the
we'll
beauty.
call an emergency podcast.
Hold on.
Yeah.
No, I'm dead serious. David Peck smiling right now. He knows one day he's going to be number 2.
The boogeyman.
The boogeyman. I was just going to say, so the boogeyman's coming for David Peck.
Bro,
Now let's. Hey, these things are coming back.
What you gonna do?
Oh.
I love it.
Saying, bro, what you know?
All right. Well, I think
It's been a lot of fun, guys. A lot of fun.
No, we got to hit Rob quick before we end this.
Sorry, Rob.
To answer that question. So I just want to
I'm not
piggyback.
sure how I got thrown off there.
Yeah, no, I just want to piggyback. So the question was, Rob, is there any card today, modern or attitude era or whatever, that a young individual you feel could buy, grade, and maybe look at capitalizing on a good investment 5 to 10 years down the road?
So you kind of threw me off with this modern, but the set that I initially was thinking about was the 1985 Wrestling All-Stars.
The magazine.
And that is the magazine card.
Yes.
And why I say that is because PSA messed up in their thinking about grading these cards for many, many years. And what I mean by that is they felt that collectors should tear those apart, and you couldn't. And so you couldn't really get anything beyond an authentic grade. PSA has came around as far as grading those where you could hand cut them. I will say that there's a lot of guys out there that look like they're in kindergarten with scissors. They're really terrible at it. You need to get yourself like a good cutter.
Yeah.
Cut yourself some 9s, 10s, really extremely low pop report. You could buy 54 cards. Pretty cheap if you're able to find a magazine and pay the grading fees and see what you get. So
I'm actually taking
with those numeric numbers. And so I think that's a good little opportunity. I think they're really aesthetically pleasing cards and they have a nice back. Of course, if it comes to hand cutting, I'm pretty good at that.
I'm actually taking a uncut magazine of the postcards from that time frame to Kansas City tomorrow. Go ahead, Mike.
All right. Well, we'll wrap that up there. I thank you so much, gentlemen. This was a great episode. We learned a lot, talked about a lot, speculated a lot, and I don't know. I think we're done. How about you guys?
Can I just say one thing, though?
Absolutely.
I need to say one thing because with COVID, there's all these podcasts that came up, and I reached out to Barry through text, and I said, have you ever been asked to be on a podcast? And it was a response, no. And I could not believe it because who has 3,000?
I'm not promoting myself.
Well, you're not promoting yourself. How do people not realize who Barry is? And I thought it was, in essence, criminal that Barry wasn't on a podcast or even asked, because then my next question would be, would you be willing to? And he said yes. And so I'm really happy you guys got Barry on there. I also reached out to Joey and I said, Joey, have you been asked to be on a podcast? And he goes, no. Wow. And so these guys have way more, more than a decade in the wrestling card game, the graded card game. And so, many times we talk about Rushmores. This is a pretty good Rushmore for wrestling card collectors.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I just want to say from my perspective that I'm doing everything I can to bring wrestling podcasts that are more than just Panini. And I say that with the slam towards some other podcasts, but there is so much more to this wrestling card market. There is so much great collectibles. And when you see the shows that we are lining up over the course of next year that Mike and I have discussed, this segues into July. PSA just announced that they're going to be grading limitless indie cards. Well, our whole podcast in July is celebrating Independence Month with indie cards. And I've got a panel of 4 people coming on, but I also got a guy coming on who was front and center, who cornered the market on FCW cards that no one's ever heard from. And I cannot wait to bring them on like you guys, because that's the reason why I do this podcast, because I want to bring new voices, new faces, people who are professionals in this market onto a podcast that we do. And I got to tell you guys, I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all very much for coming on. I appreciate your insight, everything you offered, and I want to get you guys back on here sometimes later in the fall when we got another thing coming up that we can bring you guys on. But from my perspective, I just want to say thanks. And Mike, anything else you want to throw in there? Or anything you guys want to throw in there, feel free. But thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, I just want to say too, like, it's the people that collect the cards, like, that make the wrestling card. Like, we're not like sports card collectors. Like, you guys are completely different monsters altogether, but like the stories that each of you have is what I'm interested in. Like,
correct.
Nobody wants to hear Anthony and I talk about Panini cards for 2 hours, like, every week. Nobody cares. Like, hearing people's stories and how you got to be a collector and what you collect and you're thinking about how you do it is what's interesting to me. And like, the people we have on, you guys were great, and our other guests have been great, and this is what I enjoy about doing this. Like, I just got back. I'm a long time collector. I had a card shop for 15 years. You know, I was always into sports. Like, even I was into wrestling huge, but I never got into the cards. And when I got back into this, I'm like, you know what? I love Paul Heyman. Like, that guy, I love DCW. So like, I like to collect cards because I love it, but I love hearing your stories. I love learning about the Wrestling All-Stars and all the other sets that are out there that I never knew about, like the independent sets. I know nothing about it, but I love hearing people that do talk about it. So, you know, I could go on, but I just want to thank you guys because I really do enjoy it, and I learn a lot from having people like you on.
So let's just go one by one. Barry, is there anything you'd like to add before we leave for the night?
No, just thanks for having me. It's nice. Some of you guys, I don't think I've ever seen Rob or Joey before, so it was nice to finally. I've heard of you. I've talked to you maybe by email or something before, maybe. I don't know. So it's nice talking to you guys, and I appreciate being on the podcast.
David.
Hey, man, listen, thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. It's a fun thing to do on a Friday night. I have nothing but respect for the people on this panel. I think a lot of people don't understand the legwork that went into collecting wrestling cards pre-COVID. You know, like take Barry, people have no idea the depth of his collection. Joey Graben, the boogeyman, the Grim Reaper, and Rob. You know, listen, Rob and I have been pals for, I guess, about 12 years, and there's really nobody that has done more for wrestling cards than Rob England. So he is responsible for more cards being graded in terms of getting PSA to do it, and he's graded a ton himself. So I thank Rob, and I thank you guys for having us on, and I think it's great that you're bringing fresh topics to wrestling card collectors.
Joey.
All right. First of all, okay. Like, seriously, like David Peck. David Peck has done so much, but one day David Peck will be number 2.
Here we go.
David Peck knows that. Right now, he's sitting in Orlando. He knows that. Okay, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay, because one day, number one, baby. So Rob England. No, seriously, Rob has he's done so much for my collection and for everybody who's a serious wrestling card collector. He has done so much for their collection. Barry, respect and props. Seriously, guys. And Huskerkavs. Oh my God. Everybody who is a wrestling card collector, if you haven't bought from Huskerkavs, it's because you don't know about it. I mean, that's real. I mean, seriously. But like
Appreciate it.
the OGs right here, if you don't know it, if you bid on eBay, you're gonna know it. If you bid on Golden, you're gonna know it. If you bid on Heritage, you're gonna know it. Because if you, either I'm gonna win or I'm gonna make you pay. Reality. That's real.
Go ahead, Rob.
All right. So I'm just going to go around and just kind of give my props to each of you. And Anthony, your store. And more important than your store is I like the images that you have of the cards there where you could just pop up the page and see what those cards actually look like in one single view. And I think that's extremely valuable to us as collectors and what's out there. And as far as a lot of your overseas issues as well. So thank you for all your contributions to that. And I'll just say for the sheer amount for Barry that he has graded, a lot of modern, you won't believe like how many autographs this guy has. And he's just been like a great friend, I would say, as far as we're always doing some wheels and deals. And he likes Andre. I like Andre. I get an Andre that he doesn't have. I know where it's going to go. He probably has a 1981 Marucho that showed up at his doorstep today or tomorrow, maybe. And so he's just been really great to deal with. And we've been dealing this last week or two. So it's good to talk to him here. And we're going to do some deals after this as well. So that's really fun. And David, really the mouthpiece of wrestling cards, our promoter. And
Jimmy Hart,
pretty good friend. And I'm going to be a little bit conflicted because
Jimmy Hart.
I'm going to be a little bit conflicted because if I fly to Hawaii and get a Gino Hernandez PSA 10 Wrestling All-Star,
I'll let your boy.
Daddy Fat Stacks would open the drinks truck to me. But, you know, I don't want to do Dave dirty. But,
no.
oh, my God. Yeah.
There you go.
So if that day ever came, it would be
You want to get paid, holler.
But with Graben, you know, he takes some cards that I want, but he's also been a really great customer over the years and just a stand-up guy. So it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you all. And I will say though, is you know, I graded my first PSA submission in 2007. For whatever reason, I sent in an 82 Wrestling All-Star Hulk Hogan, and it came back a PSA 9. Wow. And I've been religiously grading cards at PSA. And one time I had a problem order, and I got a customer service person on the phone, and she goes, "Oh, so you're Rob?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I've had so much fun researching your cards over the years."
That's cool.
She goes, "I can tell what cards were yours by what was in the submission." She goes, "No one else was doing that." She goes, "I got tired of seeing Mike Trout."
Yeah.
And she goes, "I would, learn along the way with what you submitted." So they noticed, and it's really great as far as just to see a lot more names in the hobby. Because at one point when there was an auction, I could pretty much tell on the bottom row, one of us won if it was a pretty good card. David won it, Joey won it, or I won it. And now the wrestling card hobby has expanded so much more. And overall, it's been great for all of us.
So cool. Hey, I appreciate all you guys. I'll just end the show the way I always do and just tell everyone happy collecting, and we'll be in touch with you guys later on again for another show. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, guys.